WP, you are a therapist for forgotten imaginary friends. You can sit over there, sir. The little guy bird guy. Yeah, that was a good way to explain him. The bird guy hesitantly walked into the office, looking this way and that, as he made his way over to the chair. His tail feathers fanned out as he sat down, and he pushed his hair feathers out of his face as he waited for the therapist to shut the door and take her own seat across from him. Now you're Mr. Azzy, right? Yeah. Azzy wasn't the most unusual name she'd come across in her work as an imaginary friend's therapist. And judging by the way Azzy looked, his imaginator must have really liked parrots. Probably Amazon parrots if the name was any suggestion. May I call you just Azzy? That's fine. Azzy, my name is Claire. I'll be your therapist starting today. Azzy nodded, careful to not make eye contact with Claire. I'm sure it's painful not being remembered by your imaginator, but I specialize in forgotten imaginary friends. So don't worry, we'll take it nice and slow and work our way through it all right. Yeah, by all accounts, Azzy was coming off as quite timid, and that was a natural response to having been forgotten. Being upset and angry or sad or lacking self-confidence were some of the most common reasons imaginary friends came to her for therapy. Luckily for Azzy, his lack of self-confidence wasn't the worst Claire had seen. I like to let the patient guide the sessions, especially for the first few meetings. If you want to jump right into your history with your imaginator or talk about your daily life, go right ahead. Or even if you just want to sit here in silence, that's perfectly acceptable too. He forgot me. Claire hadn't quite been expecting the sudden outburst, but she kept her composure as she waited for Azzy to continue. What did I do wrong? He forgot me and replaced me with a different imaginary friend. Azzy's voice raised in pitch as he continued speaking, his voice almost sounding like a squawk by the end of his sentence. Some imaginary friends were lucky. Their imaginator grew up and simply didn't want to see their imaginary friends anymore. The especially lucky imaginary friends got to stay with their imaginator well into their teen years. But inevitably, most teens grew out of having an imaginary friend and stopped trying to see them. Then there were the unlucky ones. The worst were the ones who were casually discarded as unnecessary and forgotten about by their imaginator. This commonly happened with teenagers, but the ones that stung the most were when the child was only a few years old. At least teenagers didn't go and make up a new imaginary friend. Young children, however, often came up with a new imaginary friend. He used to love parrots. He always wanted one, but when his mother said no, he imagined me up. We'd been friends for over a year, but then as he stopped talking, desperately trying to control the tears that were now rolling down his face. Claire was quickly putting the scattered pieces of the puzzle together. Most likely, Azzy hadn't been thrown away by his imaginator. Instead, as his imaginator grew up, he'd become less obsessed with parrots and slowly forgot that he'd created an imaginary parrot man to be his friend. Replacing Azzy with a new imaginary friend hadn't been an act of malice. Claire was nearly certain that the boy would remember and see Azzy again if he was reminded about him. For how long, though, she couldn't say. Claire patiently waited for Azzy's tears to dry up before she started to talk. It wasn't your fault, Azzy. You just weren't ready for him to start growing up. How's your imaginator doing now? Does he still talk about parrots? Yeah, he does. See, even if's forgotten you, he hasn't really forgotten you. His love for parrots is still there, so he must still love you even if he doesn't remember you. You think so? I do think so. Why don't you talk about your imaginator some more? Azzy nodded and began to talk. It didn't take many promptings from Claire before he began to talk about his imaginator. She couldn't help but smile as she listened, feeling the tenderness in her chest as she listened to Azzy enthusiastically speak about his imaginator. Azzy's hour was soon up, and Claire reminded him to schedule an appointment for next week. He'd come weekly for as long as he needed to, but after today's session, it was clear to Claire that Azzy just needed time to come to terms with being forgotten. It seemed that his anxiousness was just a natural trait of his, and not one born from being forgotten. As a therapist specializing in forgotten imaginary friends, Claire's schedule was quite a busy one. Not many adults wanted to keep seeing imaginary friends as they grew up. Even fewer still wanted to become a therapist for them. So naturally, Claire was in high demand. Of course, she saw regular people too. How else was she to pay the bills? But her true passion lied in helping these poor fantasied people and creatures that were no longer remembered. They deserved to have a fulfilling life too after all. Now let's see who's next. Claire murmured to herself as she flipped to the next packet of paper on her clipboard. She saw it was another imaginary friend, and she smiled. The difference she made to everyone as a whole was small, but it meant the world to those few within her reach.